Herzlich willkommen, liebe Zuschauer, zu einer weiteren Folge von Im Auge des Bruders mit Scott Ritter hier auf unserem YouTube-Kanal Gegenpol. Mein Name ist Monique Stegemann und in dieser Woche geht es um folgende Themen. Der Machtkampf in der Ukraine spitzt sich zu. Verhandelt der ukrainische Oberbefehlshaber Saluschny bereits mit dem russischen Militär? Die Huthi-Rebellen greifen US-Kriegsschiffe im Roten Meer an. Warum bekommen die USA die Huthi nicht in den Griff? Und Eskalation des Grenzkonfliktes zwischen Venezuela und Guyana. Würden die USA einen Krieg gegen Venezuela mit eigenen Bodentruppen führen? Hallo Scott, schön, dass du dir wieder die Zeit genommen hast. Wenn du möchtest, schauen wir direkt ins erste Thema, denn der Machtkampf in der Ukraine scheint sich zuzuspitzen. Anfang der Woche berichteten ukrainische Medien, dass Präsident Wladimir Selenskyj seine Befehle direkt ans Militär gebe und dabei den Oberbefehlshaber Valery Saluschny außen vor lasse. Demnach setzt Selenskyj auf Parallelstrukturen innerhalb des Militärs rund um die Kommandeure der Bodentruppen und der Luftwaffe Alexander Syrski und Nikolai Oleschczuk. Gleichzeitig erheben sich zunehmend politische Stimmen, die sich kritisch über Selenskys autoritären Führungsstil aussprechen. So zum Beispiel Vitali Klitschko, der Bürgermeister von Kiew und ehemalige Boxweltmeister. Wie schätzt du die Prozesse in der Ukraine ein? Kann es Selenskyj gelingen, innerhalb des Militärs eine Machtstütze für sich zu garantieren? Kann er sich so an der Macht halten?
I think what we have to reckon, we have to put everything into a proper context. Why is this happening right now? Well, it's one thing to sit here and just, we can hypothesize, could Zelensky stay in power if he did this, if he did that? The answer, of course, is yes, in theory. But when you dig deeper into why this is happening, the answer changes dramatically. It's happening because we're looking at the collapse of political cohesion inside Ukraine. We're seeing a crises that have arisen from the failure of leadership over the course of, the past, 600 plus days of this conflict, and even predating that. There is bitter recrimination from within Ukraine about the casualties that have been suffered, the economic harm that has been done. And people are beginning to question why these losses took place. And, Harry Truman, a former American president, once famously said, the buck stops here, meaning on his desk in the Oval Office in the White House. If you're the leader, the buck stops on your desk. But Zelensky doesn't want to apparently take responsibility. So he's seeking to blame others for their failures. And right now, his principal target is General Salushny and the Ukrainian armed forces. And in order to get around or to politically maneuver on this, battlefield, he has created this parallel structure of military command and control. This only further weakens the Ukrainian military. They say a fish stinks from its head. A rotten fish stinks from its head, and Ukraine is very much a rotten fish. And it stinks from its head right now, from Zelensky. That's the problem. What we're seeing here is, our acts of desperation, political desperation to remain, relevant. But if you look at it closely, the most irrelevant person today in Ukraine is Zelensky. The West doesn't need him or want him anymore. He has become an embarrassment, an impediment. And I think by taking on the military establishment, there will be blowback that will result in, I think, Zelensky being politically weakened. And then we see people like Klitschko, the mayor of Kiev. Then we also see Salushny, who has let it be known that he has political aspirations waiting in the wings. I think that Zelensky will be hard-pressed to survive the year.
Folgt man den Darlegungen von dem weltbekannten US-Investigativjournalisten Seymour Hersh, finden hinter den Kulissen bereits Gespräche zwischen dem ukrainischen und dem russischen Militär statt. Laut Hirsch sogar zwischen Saluschny und dem Generalstabschef der russischen Streitkräfte Valeri Gerasimov. Kern soll dabei der Wunsch nach einem Waffenstillstand sein. Das Agreement würde vorsehen, dass Russland die 4 neuen Gebiete Donetsk, Lugansk, Cherson und Saporischschja sowie die Krim behalten würde, dafür aber einem NATO-Beitritt der Ukraine zustimmen müsse. Für wie realistisch hältst du diese Aufdeckungen von Hirsch? Welche Erfolgsaussichten hätten solche Verhandlungen und sollte das tatsächlich stimmen, in wessen Auftrag könnte Saluschny damit handeln?
Look, I have tremendous respect for Seymour Hersh as a journalist. His track record demands such respect. But we also have to reflect on the fact that he is a journalist who reports on information given to him by sources. In this case, I think that Seymour Hersh's sources are 100% wrong. First of all, it's impossible. The article is impossible, literally impossible. Anybody who knows anything about Russia knows that Gerasimov is in no position to negotiate on issues of constitutionality. The territories that Russia incorporated, Kherson, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, and Lugansk, are non-negotiable. Gerasimov can't give them away. He has no authority to give them away. It's ludicrous in the extreme to think that a Russian military commander can sit at a table and negotiate away the fate of Russian territory. Read the damn Constitution of Russia. I mean, this is just stupid. It's literally stupidity in the extreme. It isn't happening because it can't happen. 2, if you read this article, it implies that Russia is somehow being beaten. Why would Russia sit down and talk with Ukraine at this juncture where they have finally achieved the strategic victory that they have been seeking the whole time, only to throw away at a negotiating table? Stupidity, stupidity, stupidity. It isn't happening. Ukraine is being defeated. Russia would never sit down and give them the pause that they desire. Russia is not in a desperate situation. Ukraine is in a desperate situation. And here comes the ultimate, the pinnacle, the cherry on the top of the sundae of stupidity that is being promulgated by this source. Russia went to war to keep Ukraine out of NATO. Russia has suffered tens of thousands of lives lost to achieve this. And now they're going to negotiate it away and let Ukraine join NATO. Stupidity, stupidity, stupidity. It isn't happening. The source that Seymour Hersh is relying upon literally doesn't know what he or she is talking about. This is wishful thinking. This is fanciful thinking. This is fantasy taking place within the halls of power of Washington, D.C. in a pathetic effort to convince themselves that somehow they have achieved something by throwing $100 billion away and 400,000 Ukrainian lives away. This war will end when Russia decides it will end, not because of some negotiation between Saluschny and Gerasimov. It'll end when Russia dictates the terms of Ukrainian surrender. That's the reality. And we know at least 2 things for certain. That when this war ends, the totality of the territory that comprises Kherson, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, and Lugansk will be Russia. Constitutionally, it's required. Russia can't give up territory, and they won't give up territory. The notion that Russia would allow the borders to be defined by the current battlefield, again, stupidity, stupidity, stupidity. And we know one other thing, that Ukraine will never, ever, ever be a member of NATO, ever. It just won't happen. So while I respect Seymour Hersh, his source on this one is so far removed from reality, it's stunning.
Wenn du sagst, dass die Quellen falsch sind, wie kommt Hirsch dann dazu, ihnen zu glauben? Angesichts seiner langjährigen Erfahrungen als Enthüllungsjournalist, seiner Analyse der Nord Stream-Anschläge und so weiter.
Do I believe they're wrong? I just said they're not just wrong, they're damn wrong. They're foolishly wrong. It's stupidity to even believe that anything they said is true, because it just runs counter to reality. As for Seymour Hersh, only Seymour Hersh can answer this question. I'm not going to get into the mind of him. Plus, he's a friend. I'm not here to criticize a good friend.
Dann schauen wir auf Europa. Da mehren sich nämlich die Stimmen, dass die EU militärisch unabhängiger von den USA werden müsse. Der französische Präsident Emmanuel Macron hat dies schon mehrfach geäußert. Nun sprach auch der ehemalige deutsche Außenminister Joschka Fischer davon, dass die EU sich militärisch stärker aufstellen müsse. Fischer forderte eigene Atomwaffen, über die die Europäische Union verfügen sollte, um das eigene Abschreckungspotenzial auszubauen. Was sagst du zu diesem Vorstoß? Braucht die EU eigene Atomwaffen? Hat sie überhaupt die militärischen Strukturen, um diese sinnvoll handhaben zu können?
Europe as an institution is fundamentally broken, beyond repair. There will always be rearguard actions trying to breathe relevance into Europe and, by extension, to NATO, the military alliance that is largely defined by Europe. But Europe is broken. The idea of a unified Europe, I think, is an idea that has run its course, and we're seeing the fracturing of Europe as we speak. And the reason why I bring this up is if Europe is broken beyond repair and is in the process of fracturing into, disparate parts, how can we speak of a unified European policy with a unified European nuclear doctrine, with a unified European military doctrine, et cetera? It won't exist. I think we're going to see Europe break into a collection of regions that have, shared economic, political, and social interests that are going to be more focused on what resonates domestically as opposed to what resonates in the halls of unelected power. I mean, the idea of the European Commission dictating, political demands on sovereign populations, I think is the time. It's been proven that this is going to be rejected across the board. We see this in Hungary. We see this in Slovakia. We see this increasingly in Germany, even though the Germans may not want to admit it. The Germans themselves are starting to hesitate about funding European Union initiatives and European Commission initiatives at the expense of the German economy. German economic reality is starting to rear its head, where the Germans recognize the absolute need to focus on what's good for Germany, not necessarily what's good for this theoretical European enterprise, especially in this failed initiative that took place in Ukraine. I think Ukraine will turn out to be the adventure that destroyed Europe. And, Macron and the current German government, Scholz, these are people who link themselves to this failed policy. But, the only thing that I think history will record is that they will go down as failures, and they will be replaced by others who will be proceeding down a path not to replicate the failures of the past, but find a new way forward that reflects the sovereign interests of their own domestic constituents, meaning that Germans are going to start looking out for Germany, French are going to start looking out for France, so on and so forth.
Schauen wir nun auf den Nahen Osten. Die Huthi haben in den vergangenen Wochen nach eigenen Angaben mehrere Handelsschiffe attackiert und einen Autofrachter gekapert. Am vergangenen Wochenende wurde auch ein US-Kriegsschiff, die USS Kann, von den Huthi angegriffen. Nun plant Washington laut dem nationalen Sicherheitsberater Jake Sullivan offenbar die Formierung einer multinationalen Taskforce, um die Durchfahrt durch das Rote Meer zu gewährleisten und mögliche Angriffe der Huthi abzuwehren. Was wollen die Huthi erreichen mit ihren Angriffen auf Handelsschiffe? Und warum gelingt es dem US-Militär nicht, die Angriffe der Huthi abzuwehren?
Well, the Houthi are clearly responding to Israel's ongoing aggression against Gaza and the Palestinian people there. And I believe the Houthi have said that they will continue to carry out these actions, both in terms of the ongoing bombardment of Israeli territory and the interdiction of Israeli shipping in the Red Sea. until the Israeli assault on Gaza has been finished and terminated. The United States has deployed military forces in the region historically in recent years for two things. One, to fight Islamic extremism, and we have seen American forces employed inside Yemen to take out Al-Qaeda and ISIS targets. And then two, more recently, to serve as a deterrent force against the potential of Iranian or Hezbollah expansion of the current conflict in Gaza. The U.S. has not been configured to specifically target Yemen. In order to do this, the United States will have to reconfigure and most likely reinforce the American military footprint that's in the region. But if you recall, the American Congress is currently in a budgetary impasse, and the military says that it doesn't have any money for the current deployment of forces, that they have to pay for this deployment out of pocket, meaning money that was allocated for training and for other operational expenses not related to the Middle East is being diverted to pay for this. So if you're going to reconfigure a force to come in and deal with this new Houthi threat, that's going to cost billions of dollars. And where's that going to come from? So while the U.S. sorts out its funding as relating to operations, there will be a period of time where it appears that the U.S. is unable to respond effectively to the Houthi, the new Houthi threat, and so that's where we're at right now. Can the Houthi continue to do this? Look, they have shown themselves to be extraordinarily resilient. Remember, Saudi Arabia, using American aircraft and American bombs, has been bombing the Houthi since 2014 to no effect. The Houthi have been winning this war. I believe that the Houthi will not be suppressed militarily by the United States, and that if the United States isn't careful, will be drawn into yet another Middle Eastern conflict that it's incapable of winning.
Kannst du da bitte ins Detail gehen? Wie stark sind die Houthi? Über welche Waffensysteme verfügen sie und sind sie tatsächlich so sehr vom Iran abhängig, wie es in den Westmedien dargestellt wird?
Well, first of all, the Houthi are an independent political and military entity. They have sympathies with Iran. They have received Iranian support in the past, but let's be clear, they aren't taking the orders of Iran. Iran's job right now is to de-escalate this conflict, and the Houthi actions are an escalation. But you also notice that while Iran may not have given the Houthi a green light, they haven't put up the red light yet either. And so I think Iran understands the benefits of the geopolitical benefits of what the Houthi are doing. The Houthi have assembled an arsenal that they've used to great effect against Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, missiles, drones, and they have used some of these weapons against Israel. These weapons are not the most modern, and Israel and the United States and Saudi Arabia have all shown an ability to shoot down, Houthi missiles and Houthi drones. But a lot of what the Houthi are doing is geopolitical in nature, as you see, where the United States is talking about forming a multinational task force. That's a diversion of resources away from the direct support of Israel. That's a Houthi victory right there. They've caused the United States to spend billions of dollars to respond to a threat that cost the Houthi millions of dollars. Two, Saudi Arabia has been put in an unenviable position. It's supposed to be supporting the Palestinian people in Gaza. I mean, Saudi Arabia, after all, did play host to an international gathering of Arab and Islamic states in Jeddah to talk about this earlier in November. And yet Saudi Arabia is now in a position where it has to shoot down Houthi missiles. And by doing so, comes off as a defender of Israel. Again, a tremendous geopolitical victory for the Houthi, a very clever political twist that's taken place there that not too many people have picked up on. But if you just think about it, the Saudis have to shoot down Houthi missiles. That means they're defending Israel, which is a position that no Arab nation wants to be seen as right now. So, again, another victory for the Houthi. If the Houthi are going to turn these political victories and geopolitical victories into something more of a military nature, they will need a military upgrade. Iran is fully capable of providing that military upgrade. The question is, will Iran provide that military upgrade? We'll only know that answer when Houthi missiles start striking Israeli targets with precision and in a repeated nature. That means that they have been given missiles with greater accuracy, greater maneuverability, greater survivability. Right now, they don't seem to have those missiles in their arsenal. But if those missiles do appear, I think that'll be the first overt signal that Iran has decided to play the Houthi card in a more serious fashion.
Stell dir bitte vor, du wärest verantwortlich für die Festlegung der militärischen Strategie der USA. Wie würdest du mit der Bedrohung durch die Houthi umgehen? Was müssten die USA tun, um die Houthi zu besiegen?
War is an extension of politics by other means. So the first thing I would do is say, how do we handle the Houthi solution, the Houthi problem, without resorting to war? We don't have a good track record in the region. And I'm not arrogant enough to believe that suddenly I can come in and change decades of incompetence and difficulties and come forward with a victory. That's the trap. That's the military trap. I would take a hard look at why the Houthi are doing what they're doing, and it clearly relates to Israel's gross overreaction and war crimes against the Palestinian people in Gaza. So to win politically against the Houthi, I would focus on ending the Israeli war crimes in Gaza and bringing an end to that conflict. That's an achievable objective. If I could get Israel to stop bombing Gaza, if I could get Israel to withdraw its troops from Gaza, if I could get Israel at the negotiating table with the Palestinian people, inclusive of a Hamas presence, because Hamas is a reality that's not going away, and come up with a pathway towards a two-state solution, the Houthi violence would stop, and I wouldn't have had to drop a single bomb on them. So that would be my goal, to seek a peaceful, viable resolution instead of adding more flame to a fire that's already grown far too big.
In unseren letzten Interviews haben wir mehrfach das Thema der globalen Kapazitäten des US-Militärs gestreift. Du hast deutlich gemacht, dass die US nicht in der Lage wären, zeitgleich Kriege im Nahen Osten, in der Ukraine, in Korea und in Taiwan zu führen. Dennoch ist Washington bestrebt, überall militärisch präsent zu sein. So führt auch bei der jüngsten Eskalation des Grenzkonfliktes zwischen Venezuela und Guyana eine direkte Spur in die USA. Nicht nur, dass die USA direkte Interessen haben, den US-Energiekonzern ExxonMobile bei der Ölförderung vor der Küste Guyanas zu unterstützen. Im Gespräch ist auch eine permanente Stationierung von US-Soldaten in der umstrittenen Region Esequibo, unmittelbar vor der venezolanischen Grenze. Welches Interesse hat Washington an einer Eskalation zwischen Venezuela und Guyana? Und hoffen Sie nach wie vor auf einen Putsch in Venezuela?
I don't think the United States ever walks away from regime change aspirations, having targeted Nicolás Maduro for elimination. I believe if an opportunity availed itself, that the United States would take advantage of that. Venezuelan oil is the commodity that the United States needs, not Maduro's political viability. Right now, the way to get to Venezuelan oil is through Nicolás Maduro. But if the United States were able to take advantage of the Venezuelan Guyana crisis and create conditions that could lead to the political demise of Nicolás Maduro, we would do that, because then we would have somebody in power in Caracas who we don't have to struggle with when it comes to getting access to their oil. We would once again regain control of Venezuelan oil production, and that would be a good thing. And so we're not going to, the United States, I believe, is not going to sit back and let Venezuela expand its energy holdings by taking over this disputed strip of land between it and Guyana, where there is a considerable amount of oil and gas resources. So we'll deny Venezuela that opportunity, or seek to deny Venezuela that opportunity. And if through this crisis, the opportunity comes where we can undermine the rule of Nicolás Maduro and remove him from power, we will do so. The United States is not and never will be the friend of Nicolás Maduro or a Venezuela that is governed by Nicolás Maduro.
Wenn der Konflikt um Esequibo nun weiter eskalieren sollte, 2 Fragen dazu an dich, Scott. Sind die USA wirklich bereit für einen Krieg mit Venezuela? Würden sie US-Soldaten in den Kampf gegen Venezuela schicken? Und zweitens, wie stark ist die venezolanische Armee?
A war against Venezuela is far easier than a war in Europe or a war in the Middle East or a war in the Pacific. It's literally in the backyard of the United States. The United States has a dedicated combatant military command, Southern Command, which it's their job to prepare for these conflicts. Logistically, this would be a very sustainable conflict, short lines of communications. It would play to America's power in terms of employing air power and naval power, sea power. And we could definitely project military forces into Venezuela. While the Venezuelan armed forces are capable, they're not capable of standing up to the American military in a conflict of this nature. The problem isn't, of course, defeating the conventional forces of Venezuela, which I believe would happen out of hand. The problem is then what do you do next? Because the people of Venezuela will not tolerate an American-led occupation. And so it will become a guerrilla war, an insurgency, and this we will never win. So while I believe the United States is fully capable of launching a military operation that can defeat the Venezuelan armed forces and even physically overthrow Nicolás Maduro, we will run into a situation where not only will Venezuela be denied us because of the continued resistance of the Venezuelan people, but the animosity that will accrue throughout the Latin American and South American region about this American aggression will cause us to lose the entire region. It could lead to problems in Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, and elsewhere. And for that reason, I would hope that American political leaders would again forego the temptation of a military victory by understanding that the military victory will only lead to a political defeat, and instead go forward with the politics and seek a way to resolve the issue peacefully without resorting to violence. But we're in an election year, and I think Joe Biden would very much like to be seen as a war president who has actually won something. So there might be a lot of temptation for the United States to employ military force against Venezuela.
Das letzte Mal scheiterte im Jahr 2019 ein Putschversuch unter US-Regie in Venezuela. Nicht zuletzt deswegen, weil Russland 2 Militärflugzeuge nach Caracas schickte. Wie würden Russland oder China reagieren, wenn sich die USA an einem Krieg gegen Venezuela beteiligen würde?
The reality is that Venezuela is very far away from Russia and China, and neither of those nations has the ability to surge sufficient military power into Venezuela and sustain it. The same way that the United States has avoided putting boots on the ground in Ukraine to prevent any World War III type scenario from breaking out, I believe that Russia and China would avoid putting boots on the ground in Venezuela for the same reason. If it looks as if the United States is going to go in militarily, then these nations will instead seek to oppose the United States politically, and then to support Venezuelan resistance forces, probably through proxy via Venezuela, via Nicaragua and Cuba, to encourage resistance against the United States. I think the biggest threat to the United States in terms of military power is Cuba. I think that the Cuban forces could be supported by Russia with weaponry, arms, etc., to create a viable insurgency against the United States in Venezuela, and that Russia would seek to put its military forces in Cuba as a deterrence against any American action against Cuba, as opposed to putting military forces into Venezuela.
Vielen Dank, Scott, für deine Zeit und deine aufschlussreichen Analysen. Bis nächste Woche.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Dankeschön. Tschüss. Meine lieben Zuschauer, auch an euch herzlichen Dank fürs Zusehen. Wenn euch die Sendung gefallen hat, dann teilt das Video doch bitte breit in den sozialen Medien, abonniert eben noch unseren Kanal Gegenpol, folgt uns unbedingt auch auf den Plattformen Odyssey und X, ehemals Twitter. Und vor allem, wenn ihr mal Fragen habt, die wir unbedingt an Scott Ritter stellen sollen, dann schreibt sie uns doch in die Kommentare. Bis dahin, eure Monique.